Hi everybody, we are actually in week 7 before semester breaks, and this is our second online class sessions. I hope everybody stay with me for this week. Okay, today's topic is introduction to instructional system design. This is very important topics where when we're going to design any instructions, whether we're going to deliver it through web-based or mobile-based devices or web-based platform, we must actually look into and identify the instructional system design model that we're going to use in our process in developing any learning and teaching materials. What is instructional system design? From the word of system, I think everybody should easily know that system involve a systematic process. So yeah, ISD or instructional system design is a systematic approach to the design, develop, evaluation and utilizations of complete system of instruction, including all appropriate component and a management pattern for using them. It also known as an organized procedure step by step that include the step of analyzing, designing, developing, implementing and evaluating instruction. It is very important to have an ID model because it helps the instructional designer plan how the course should be designed and developed. It helps him visualize the course and ensure that all design elements are included in the course. An ID model helps to evaluate learner needs and design and develop the course based on this. If I can give an analogy, if you want to cook something, let's say you want to cook nasi goreng or fried rice, then you need the recipe of the fried rice, the step by step, okay, from the preparation of the raw materials that you will use when you cook the fried rice till the process of how to cook it, so that you will get a very tasty fried rice. Instructional design aims for a learner-centered rather than the traditional teacher-centered approach to instruction so that effective learning can take place. This is very important factors that must be considered when you design any instruction. When we design an instructions, the instructional learning material will be used by the student. So learning is our focus, not teaching. When therefore, how to design instructional materials that will trigger student learning. This is very a challenges task. So this means that every component of the instruction is governed by the learning outcome, which has been determined after a thorough analysis of the learner needs. So that's why we need to go through on the systematic process in designing any learning and teaching materials. What is instructional design models? Well, an instructional design model is actually a tools or a framework to develop any instructional materials. It actually will assist instructional designers, including us teachers and instructors, to provide a structures and meaning to the learning materials. It allows us to visualize the trainings and the education needs or the instruction needs and break down the process of designing the training and educational materials into steps. So, indirectly, instructional design model consists of systematic procedure or step where we can follow to design an instruction. There are many models of instructional designs that have been developed throughout the times and is suitable for various instructional purposes, and it have similarities and differences among the models. So there is an articles did mention that there are up to 40 instructional design models, and the instructional design model keep actually formulating or formulated by others from time to times based on the needs of teachers, instructional designer, and also based on the developments of tools in teaching and learning. Here are some examples of instructional design models that can be used when you want to design any instructions that will be delivered through any technological tools. The first one is ADDIE models. We're going to discuss in detail about ADDIE model after this. The Dick and Carey models, waterfall models, rapid prototyping models, Hannafin Pack design models, the Nick and Gustafson design model, Gerald Kemp design models, the Galash and Alley design models, Assure models, R2D2 models, Integrative Learning Design Framework for Online Learning, Backward Design models, Spiral models, and there are other models. So let us take a break. It might be 5 minutes or what. You can actually just go through our online forum topic under others ID models. You might be need to explore other models than the 13 models that have been mentioned in this slide. The first instructional design models that we're going to discuss for today is ADDIE model. Instructional system design has been around since the early 1950s. ADDIE first appeared in 1975. It was created by the Center for Educational Technology at Florida State University for the U.S. Army and then quickly adapted by all the U.S. Armed Forces. The 5 phases were based somewhat on the previous ISD models developed by the U.S. Air Force called the 5-step approach. ADDIE models is the generic process traditionally used by instructional designers and training developers. The 5 phases analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation represent a dynamic, flexible guideline for building effective trainings and performance support tools. ADDIE model is one of the popular instructional system design models that most of designers use it when they design learning and instruction materials. However, there are some remarks on ADDIE models might be not really appropriate nowadays when you use it to develop a non-linear application such as a mobile apps and web-based development. However, it depends on the instructional designer who going to use the ADDIE models or not. If you use ADDIE models by following the linear step of from one phase to another phase, yes, might be ADDIE model is not appropriate. But ADDIE model also can have a non-linear flow from analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluate. So it depends on you who's going to use the models. Let us explore what are the tasks that we should do in every phase of ADDIE model. The first phase is analysis phase. In this phase, we need to study or determine the nature and the relationship of the parts of by analysis. We need to understand our audience by asking several questions such as, who is the audience? What do they need to learn? What are the delivery options? What constraint exists? What is the timeline for project completion? We should know actually the background our respondents or our students so that when we develop our learning and teaching materials, it's going to be aligned with the needs of the students. Another terms that they use to call for this analysis phase is need analysis, knowing your audience. Sometimes you might be need to do a survey to know the backgrounds of the potential student who's going to use your instructional materials that will be developed later. Second phase is design phase. So in order to effectively teach, there are 5 considerations to keep in mind in this design phase. The first one is, what are your objectives? you have to have your learning objective. What skills, knowledge, and attitude are you trying to develop? What resources and strategy will you use in your instruction? What are the learning theories that we should use in designing our instruction? Sometime might be in this design phase. This is the phase where we're going to implement all the learning strategies such as problem-based learning, principle, project-based learning criteria, authentic learning principles, 9 events of Gartner of instruction. So we use and we implement all the principles of instructional design in this design phase. How will you structure the content of your learning material? How do we put our content in our products or learning and teaching material later? What is the flow of the instruction? Is it going to be a non-linear flow, linear flow? This is where we need to decide in this phase. How will you assess the learner's understanding and whether objective have been met? So the design phase is very important in designing any learning materials. Okay, after we done with design phase, we move to develop phase. The development phase addresses the tool used to create the instructional materials. In this phase, we decide on which software that we're going to use to develop our learning and teaching materials. Which authoring system software that we should use? What are the multimedia software that we should use in editing the graphics, the videos, the audios, and everything? Which platform that we plan to develop our product? Is it going to be web-based platform, mobile-based applications, or might be a standalone application? This is a process of producing the materials needed to meet the goals and objective. This is what happened in this develop phase. This phase also will detail the plan that lists step-by-step procedure, time schedule, and deadline that we should follow in developing our product. And in order to help the student learn the task, a list of activities should be produced in this phase. We're going to produce the activities. And it's important to review previous material so that information is not repeated. Next is going to be implementation phase. In this phase, the first use of the instructions or materials are described to the learners. The product has been developed at the prototypes levels. We're going to implement the products to the real user. The instructor must be ready to face unforeseen problems like learners' difficulties of instructional challenges, because the product is at the stage of prototype, known also as a beta versions of the materials. So the tools necessary to fix any problem should be at hand. So in this implementation phase, we going to see how do we going to revise back our product, and implementation timelines must be established and the final product must be delivered. So in this phase also, if we need to revise our product, then we have to do it again, so that the students can get benefit from the products. Once the final product is ready, the learning environment must be prepared and the learners must be prepared, which include advising students on requirement, and all the tools to be used must be ready. So the implementation phase is very important before we going to produce the final products of our learning and teaching materials, which is actually going to be ready for the final phase of AD. The final phase in AD model is evaluation phase. The evaluation phase is a systematic process that determines the effectiveness of the instructional design. At this phase, your final product is ready, where you would like to test it, to evaluate it among the real user. The evaluation is an ongoing process that happens at every phase of AD process. evaluation consists of two parts, which is formative, is a part of each proceeding phase and determine effectiveness of each stage, and summative is a process of gathering data following implementation in order to determine the effectiveness of the goal. We're going to review and evaluate each phase to make sure it's accomplishing its goals, and we perform external evaluation that will ensure that the information will be used properly. And we're going to revise the trainings of education systems to make it better. So this evaluation phase is very important. Sometimes in this phase also will involve assessment instruments such as pre and post tests, where we would like to see whether the students' performance will be improved before will be improved after they use our learning and teaching product. So from the pre and post test, we can see whether the product actually will show or will be effective enough to be used by the students. To explain more on task and output in every phase of any models, this diagram share you some of the important information. In analysis phase, sample tasks that might be will cover in this phase are need assessment, problem identification, and task analysis. Outputs such as learner profile, description of constraints, needs and problem statement, and task analysis also will be produced in this phase. Next, in design phase, we will start to write objective, develop test item, plan instruction, and identify resources and outputs such as measurable objective, instructional strategies, prototype specifications, and the learning theories or principle that we will select to produce or to design our product will be decided also in this phase. Next, we go to the development phase, where the process of authoring and producing the material will be started. This is the phase where we work with producer. We will develop the workbooks and flowchart and program such output such as storyboard, script, exercise, and computer-assisted instruction or web-based instruction or mobile application will be produced in development phase. When the beta versions of the product has been developed, then we will implement the product to the real user. So this is what happened in implementation phase, the process of installing the project in the real world context. Tasks that will be covered in this phase are teacher trainings and try out, more on pilot testing of the product. So the student comments and data output that come up from this phase. The last phase is evaluation phase. This is the process of determining the adequacy of the instruction. So such tasks like record time data, interpret test results, survey graduates, and revise activity will be done in this phase. Some output come up from this phase are recommendation, project report, the revised prototype. The prototype has been revised based on the comments of the students. Remember, I did mention before on remarks by educators and instructional designer on the weaknesses of EDI models. If you look at the first diagram that I show you in the previous slide, we can see that EDI models is kind of a linear instructional system design models. However, if you would like to make it EDI as a non-linear models, you can actually follow this diagram, where you can see is that from the analysis you move it to the design, to the develop, to the implement, and back to the analysis, and evaluate you put it as the center phase in the middles of the other four phases, where you done with every phase, you're going to go for evaluations. You will check your process, and it will go back to the phases where you need to realign some of your decision before this, so that the product will be actually improved and revised according to the needs of the learners. Beside AD models, the next instructional design model that we will explore in today's session is backward design. Backward design is a concept introduced by Wiggins and McTagee. So this concept is actually looking at the process of designing and developing instruction backward. We're going to revise the process. Usually in AD models, we actually analyze first the learner needs, the needs of the contents of the instruction that we're going to deliver, the learning strategy that we're going to implement in our instructional materials, and other things that we should consider in designing an instruction. And then we develop it, we design it, we develop it, we evaluate it, and then we're going to measure the effectiveness of the product. But not in backward design. Backward design is going to be backward. We're going to decide first on the goals and the aims that we need to achieve before we design any instructional design materials. Backward design is a method of designing educational curriculums by setting goals before choosing instructional methods and form of assessment. And backward design of curriculum typically involve three stages, which are identify the result desired, big ideas and the skills, determine the acceptable evidence, and plan learning experience and instruction. So we must actually identify first the desired goals, the desired outcome that we want to achieve before we actually design and develop our instructional learning materials. Then based on the outcome, we will work up to it how to design the instruction to achieve the outcome. It's just like outcome-based education. You have the outcome first, then you design your curriculum. So this is actually a new perspective of instructional design models and process that we should actually consider in designing our instructional learning materials. I have mentioned before there are three processes that involve in backward design model. The first one is identify desired result. In this phase or in process, we're going to have the big ideas and the skills and the knowledge that we would like to achieve before we develop the product. We aim first. This product is going to help to achieve what? So we identify the desired result, the desired outcome. Before we move to the second step, which is determines the acceptable evidence. What are the evidence? What are kind of assessment tasks that we should develop to achieve the desired result or desired goals? And based on the assessment tools and the desired goal, then we plan our learning experience and instruction. We plan our learning environment. We plan our learning materials. So all the instructional learning materials will be designed based on the desired goals and the assessment tasks that have been designed earlier to achieve the desired goal. In the first stage of backward design models, we will identify the desired result. We should ask questions such as what should student know, understand, and be able to do? What content is worthy of understanding? So we try to identify first what are the desired goals and outcome that we want from the instructional materials that will be developed later. In this stage, we're going to consider our goals, examine established content standards at national, state, or district standard, and we're going to review the curriculum expectation. Because typically we have more content than we can reasonably address within the available time, we must make choices. We must actually identify the desired outcome that we want before we continue to the second stage. After we identify the desired outcome and goals, next we're going to determine the acceptable evidence. How will we know if students have achieved the desired results or outcome? So what will be accepted as evidence of student understanding and proficiency? How do we assess the desired outcome? We're going collected assessment evidence needed to document and validate that desired learning has been achieved. So we're going to decide how to assess the desired outcome, whether through question and answer, quiz, test, exam, project, interview, reflection, any kinds of assessment. And remember, we are talking about assessment, not evaluation. In assessment, we're going to provide feedback, and assessment is a process where we're going to identify the student acquisition of knowledge. Then later on, we give feedback to the student how they're going to improve on their understanding on the concept or the materials that we teach. So this will actually help students to achieve the desired goals. After this, we done with this stage, then we move to the last stage, and we should actually plan on how to design instruction to achieve the desired goals based on the assessment evidence that we accept to prove that the outcome has been achieved by the students. Next, the last stage in backward design model is stage 3, plan learning experience and instruction. After we have been identified the desired goals and the assessment that acceptable to prove the achievement of the desired goals, we need to plan the learning experience and instruction. Several key questions that we should ask are: what activities will equip students with the needed knowledge and skills? What materials and resources are best suited to accomplish this goal? Which learning theories and learning principles that we should implement in our instruction to achieve the desired goal? Choices about teaching methods, sequence of lessons, and resource materials must be decided in this stage. Having a clear goal helps us to focus our planning and guide purposeful action towards the intended result. So you can see that this is how the backward design model works. It starts with the desired goals, the assessment that we decide that we can accept to prove the achievement of the desired goal. Then we go to the process of designing the instructions. So, and for me, in this stage 3, if you thought that in stage 3 you will consider other instructional design models to make your process systematic in design of instruction, yeah, you can still use it. So backward design usually is just a process of looking at the desired goal, the assessment methods that we accept to measure the achievement of the goal, and then we design the instruction. But when we actually reach up to this stage, maybe we need other instructional design models that can be used as a guideline to design the instruction to achieve the desired goal.